It'll be interesting to see how the season develops. But yeah, I think Kevin Love. I mean, those are the teams I could see Kevin Love being traded to. The few you named, obviously the 3, 4 I named, I probably could see them being in the mix for him. I'm trying to think of other teams that would make sense. I heard a report maybe that the Lakers, not a report, but I see a lot of, browsing through trade forums, reading some articles of trades people would like. A lot of people are saying the Lakers. Again, as a Lakers fan, no, no, and no. But I don't think the Lakers would. In fact, I know the Lakers wouldn't do that just because it would kill their cap space, and they're not that stupid. So
I don't think GM LeBron is going to be all for it.
Okay, again, GM Magic Johnson is But anyway, I'm not going to get into this argument with you. But being a Spurs fan, how would you like Kevin Love on the Spurs? That's a serious question because I think he would be a pretty decent fit there.
I don't like Kevin Love, so I wouldn't like him on the Spurs.
Okay.
What are the Spurs able to give up? I mean, if you're giving up Pau Gasol.
Pau Gasol's an expiring contract, yeah.
Sure, but what else do the Spurs really have to offer?
I mean, again, they have a first-round pick. They have Lonnie Walker there.
I don't know if I want to give up a first-round pick for Kevin Love.
Well, you have to give up a first-round pick for Kevin Love. But okay, I mean, I understand. You're not a fan.
Maybe
I think
if you're
that would be
Toronto's pick, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Cleveland would get more than that for Kevin Love. But
well, that's what I'm saying. But I don't know if I want to give up those young assets for Kevin Love. And call me crazy, but
they're trying to win.
Yeah, and I don't think a LaMarcus Aldridge and a Kevin Love. Again, I don't. In today's NBA, I understand maybe you're trying to win regular season games, but I don't. Kevin Love and LaMarcus Aldridge out on the court at the same time against the Warriors doesn't mean much to me.
Well, I mean, again, you're thinking only about against the Warriors. Can they match up against the Warriors? I don't think any team can match up against the Warriors.
But I don't think they can match up against the Raptors. I don't think they can match up against the Celtics in that
But
scenario.
Again, any team who gets Kevin Love is not going to match up against the Raptors. It's not going to match up against. I don't think Kevin Love will be that much of a difference maker. Any team in the East too. I mean,
then what's the point of giving up assets for Kevin Love?
Well, but teams are going to do it because again, you're thinking of a way of championship or nothing. But Greg Popovich is not necessarily thinking that way. Greg Popovich, I think, is thinking, let's make the playoffs. And owners aren't thinking that way because
Greg Popovich for his last 2 years, or what? I mean,
he wants to compete. Yes,
he wants to compete, but he wants to compete for a championship.
He does.
I don't think he's going to be settling for.
Will Kevin Love give him a better chance having Kevin Love on this roster as compared to having a Pau Gasol and a future first round pick?
But I don't think Greg Popovich is at a point where he's going to throw away the next 5 years when he's not there just for this 2 years. I don't think he's that selfish of a player. I think he puts the team first a little bit.
Well, if that was the case, though, he would have traded Kawhi Leonard to a Philly or to an LA where he could acquire young assets.
But LA wasn't seeming to giving up any of the assets.
Well, we don't know what that was, but what I'm saying is he would have gotten younger assets.
It didn't seem like Brandon Ingram was involved.
Probably not, and I think you're right about that.
If Brandon Ingram was involved, I think you could be seeing Kawhi Leonard in the Lakers jersey.
But I think the fact that, not the fact, but I think the Lakers would have eventually. I think the Lakers were playing. Again, we don't know what to believe or hard about, but I think the Lakers would have eventually would have been willing to give up Brandon Ingram. I don't
know.
I think they would have been. I think if it was just Brandon Ingram, they would have been willing to give up Brandon Ingram. Probably maybe even a Brandon Ingram and a Josh Hart. Probably not a Kuzma. Probably not a Ball. But
I don't know if that's. I mean, I would maybe that's true.
Exactly. We don't know what it was. But what I'm saying is, I think a lot of these GMs are thinking, let's make the playoffs. I mean, why else would have Cleveland kept Kevin Love? I guess it makes sense why they kept him so they could maybe showcase him. But teams are. Why else would Detroit go out and get Blake Griffin last year? To make the playoffs. They weren't thinking win championship.
Sure. 100%, but I think the Spurs are at a point where, I mean, I know a lot of people disagree here, but I think the Spurs are at a point where they're going to make the playoffs even without, adding Kevin Love. Now, would Kevin Love maybe make them win a few more games against some teams? Maybe. Maybe his defense wouldn't. He's sketchy. I mean, obviously, his numbers this year so far when it comes to shooting, and that's, high volume shooting because he's on the team where he's shooting, they're not very good. He hasn't shown us that he's Minnesota Kevin Love since the past 5 years. So I don't know if I consider him a superstar. I know he used to be one. I don't know if he is one anymore.
I mean, I agree with you there. And he might be one of the players we named that's not a superstar, but he was an all-star. He was an all-star last year.
In the East, he wouldn't have been an all-star in the West.
Sure, but he was still an all-star.
Okay, in the East, but okay. All right. Well, that being said, I think that's enough Kevin Love talk. I mean, damn, 20 minutes on Kevin Love.
Well, okay, we'll move on. I did want to throw out Houston still as a fit and see maybe if you could get Houston for if Houston was willing to give up 2 first rounders and obviously Brandon Knight's contract. Would you be willing to do that real quick? 2 first round picks, obviously late picks, and Brandon Knight's contract. Yes or no?
I mean, 2 first-round picks like now, or 2 first-round picks in the future.
2019 and 2022.
I mean, if I'm Cleveland, I'm hoping to get more, right? But
yeah, probably you're hoping to get more. It depends on what other team is willing to give up a first round pick and how high that pick would be. But would you, if you're Houston, do you do that?
yeah, if I'm Houston, I do. I mean, taking Kevin Love. Now, again, Houston's problem is that their defense so far hasn't been very good. And obviously, adding Kevin Love isn't going to help.
You're thinking too much defense with Kevin Love. Kevin Love, nobody's considering Kevin Love a defensive player here.
But Houston's one of those teams that really, right, if anyone's in the West is going to compete and, against the Warriors, and they shown us last year that they took them to a Game 7 that they were winning. So I don't think they're as good of a team this year because they gave up on a lot of defense. They gave up a reason.
But we know that. But if they can't get somebody, a defensive-minded player.
Okay, if that's the case, if that's the deal, then yes, I trade for Kevin Love.
Okay, finally, we get you to admit that. So you'll trade for someone for Kevin Love. All right, who do you want to move on to here?
Okay, well, let's move on. Let's talk about the 2 Portland guys.
Okay, good. Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum. Portland's off to a good start right now. They're off to a 2-1. I mean, again, they're 2-1 right now, playing some solid basketball. Dame's playing good basketball. McCollum's playing decent basketball. Again, we're seeing how this season goes on, but we're gonna probably take into consideration here that they'll have another good regular season, maybe perform pretty solid in the playoffs, get eliminated in the first or second round. Like, you don't see them making the Western Conference Finals.
I think the Jazz. I think the Nuggets. I think the West. The West is going to be interesting. I'm not as down on the Trailblazers as other people I've heard in other podcasts. But I mean, is there if somebody told me in 10 months that they made the Western Conference Finals, I wouldn't be totally surprised. I think Golden State is above everyone, and then there's a few other teams that can really compete for that. So I don't think that they're totally away, especially if they can figure out getting Collins more minutes. So I don't necessarily think that they're aren't capable, but we'll see. I mean, they kind of flaked last year.
Yeah, so I agree with you there. If they do make the Western Conference Finals, they probably stick with these two. They probably say, okay, let's hold off for another year. But let's say they don't. Which one do you trade? Do you trade one? Do you trade one? Do you trade the other? Do you trade both?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I think the obvious answer would be you keep Damian Lillard because he's the one who's made a few All NBA teams. So you keep Damian Lillard and you try to use CJ McCollum to build the roster on Damian Lillard.
I don't disagree with you here, and I think I always, to me, Portland and Washington, who we're going to touch on probably next, in the same boat. They both have a good point guard, probably someone who's considered to be a superstar point guard. Obviously, I think we both would agree that Lillard's better than Wall. They both have a shooting guard, and I think here in this situation, I think we both agree again that Beal's better than McCollum. But
I think
Okay, yeah, but both teams here are in positions where they continuously make the playoffs, but they underperform when they, not necessarily even underperform when they in the playoffs, but they can't seem to get over that hump. And in this situation, I think I would keep, like you just said, keep Lillard, trade McCollum. And the reason here, Lillard is still 28. He's proven to be healthy, so that's not in question. And I think you could trade McCollum, pick up someone for McCollum, maybe a player or two that fit there better, and you could still compete. And then if it doesn't go right, then you could trade McCollum trade Lillard 2 years from now, and I don't think he'll have any less trade value than he did when he was 28, when he is 29.
Yeah, I mean, I agree there. And the good thing is that for CJ McCollum, I don't hate on CJ McCollum. I think he's a good player. I think there's things you can get for him. I think, if you're looking for a win now, like one of the trades I had in mind was Kevin Love for CJ McCollum. Kind of like, obviously Portland gets an older player, but they get a new shot at, maybe Kevin Love and Dame Lillard are able to work out and build a good chemistry together. So that was one of my ideas. I think CJ McCollum is someone that you can get some assets for. You get some players to build around Dame Lillard.
Yeah, so I'm trying to McCollum again. I'm trying to think of what type of trades would make sense for McCollum. I mean, I know a lot of people are throwing out Middleton for McCollum. I don't think if I'm Milwaukee, I don't do that. I don't like that trade for Milwaukee, so I don't think they would do that.
Yeah, I think defensively that's just such a downgrade, and the offensive games are. I mean, obviously CJ McCollum is more of a playmaker, but they're putting up almost the same amount of points a game and similar shooting numbers, and Middleton's defense is just much better.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mess with that if I'm Milwaukee. I'd try to go all out to try to resign him. How about maybe a trade with New Orleans for Nikola Mirotic? Because I mean, obviously Mirotic has been shooting lights out. I don't think that's sustainable. But at this point, Mirotic might even be a better player than CJ McCollum, and that's not a knock at CJ McCollum. I think that's just a praise for Nikola Mirotic. And even if he's not a better player, they might be two players who kind of cancel each other out. And again, that's not to say that both players are bad. That's to say both players are good. Would you consider that one if
Mirotic keeps playing like he does now? I mean, no, because the fit is so good. I forgot to mention when I was naming those teams in the West, one of the teams I've been super impressed by are this New Orleans Pelicans, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that Mirotic and the signing of Julius Randle are really working out for them. I mean, Randle's averaging 20 points off the bench. I was watching the game earlier today. I mean, he was tearing it up a little bit. So I think if it keeps working like this, then no, you don't do the deal just because of the fit is so good. I mean, you're gonna have two. You can stagger your minutes in a way where you have two of those three bigs out there at the same time. Anthony Davis is arguably the best player in the league right now. So if it keeps going well, then you don't make that deal. Then if it doesn't keep going well, then I feel like Mirotic's trade value goes down because, CJ McCollum has a few more years of body of work of being a very good NBA player. That if Mirotic's value goes down, you're not going to trade the two straight up.
Yeah, and I think for me here, like you mentioned Randle. I'm not trading Randle. I've loved Randle since he's been from his days with the Lakers. I like him I really like him on New Orleans. I think he's a great fit there. I think McCollum fits better because depending on how Randle and Mirotic continue to play. I'm looking right now. Mirotic is not having a great day today, which is okay. I mean, it's the third game right now in the season. Way too early to tell. But I do think that in the long run, Randle will fit better there than Mirotic. And then I think I do make that trade just because of the fact that McCollum is more of a need in terms of a shooting guard as compared to a power forward. And so in that sense, I think McCollum fits the team better. He's signed to a longer deal, makes more money, which is okay because you can make it work with the contract. So that's one option I think that will be out there for McCollum, and getting Mirotic in return for him would be a good thing for Portland. And obviously, I think you would get a little more than just Mirotic, depending on how the season keeps going. How about? I think you're not gonna like this one for Portland, and quite frankly, I wouldn't like this one for Portland. How about him fitting in Minnesota for Wiggins and perhaps a first rounder? Wiggins and a first rounder. Do you make that trade if you're Portland?
No, I mean just because Andrew Wiggins hasn't shown me much.
Okay.
Obviously, I mean he just doesn't. He's like a Rudy Gay,
Yeah, and that's why you have to add in that first round pick. How about Detroit? And again, I don't know who Detroit gives up. I'm not giving up Blake Griffin or Drummond, but how about him?
Wait, you wouldn't do a Drummond for CJ McCollum if you're Detroit?
No, and for the same reason. We were talking about this beforehand. Okay, I'm not saying that Drummond is a better player than
How
McCollum.
do we know we're gonna start? Okay, keep going.
But here's the